So yesterday, we spoke about, we have a double sidra this weekend, this Shabbat. We have Acharei Mot, Kedoshim. Now, yesterday we spoke about one of the topics that emerges from Parashat Acharei Mot. Today I want to focus on Parashat Kedoshim. And I see you, Mitch, here. I know it's one of your favorites. One of your favorite Torah portions. I remember us having a long session about this, the contents of this Torah portion in Shavuot a couple of years ago in the library. There were other Jews there, but I remember the conversation with you because we prepared together some of the stuff then. So Shavuot is around the corner. For those that want to participate in learning, we let you know we are already preparing our Sinai lounge. We'll tell you more about that later. So, I want to share something that happened to me. I was I prepared for this Torah portion to speak about a very specific mitzvah that I will remind to you and I will share with you. But then I realized that, and this came to me for the first time, that there is a bigger context for all these mitzvot. Do you know how many mitzvot we have in this Torah portion? Give me a number. There are many. Who says more than 15? More than 15. Who says more than 30? Now, don't cheat, don't Google. More than 30. More than 40. Okay, I see Mark Silverstein and Rabbi Miriam saying a bit more, a bit more. More than 50? 51. 51 mitzvot. So, I wanted just to talk about one of them. Mitzvat Pe'ah. Have you heard about Mitzvat Pe'ah? Now, let me tell you something. When I said to my wife, I think I will be speaking Shabbat about Mitzvat Pe'ah, she asked me, why are you going to talk in Shabbat about weeks? The reason is because they have the exact same sound in Hebrew, and I was like, no, Mitzvah Pe'ah, the mitzvah of not reaping the corners of your field. It's a very important mitzvah. Now, how do you define the corner? How much is a corner of your field? The Torah doesn't define that. The Torah has no definition for that. But later on, the Mishnah in Pe'ah, which is an entire section of the Mishnah, defines how much one is supposed to live. And the Mishnah says, no less, and this is not the tithe, okay? This is not the asirit. No less than 1/6. 1/6 of your field needs to be left as a corner. Now, what we are talking about? We are talking about this mitzvah that says that there is a portion of your field that you need to refrain from reaping, refrain from touching, even almost refrain from visiting, so you allow those that are in need in your society to go and take from there. You're not supposed to be there. You're not supposed to touch anything from there. According with the law of Torah, and of course later on with the rabbinical law, that space is supposed to be left that way. And the Mishnah says that this is one of the things that Ein Lahem Shiur. Exactly as we read every morning, all these things that Ein Lahem Shiur, that there's no way to measure them. Mitzvat Pe'ah, the fulfillment of the commandment of Peah, there's no measurement for it. And they explain. They say, well, if there is many poor people in your town, you might need to live with more than 1/6. If there's a difficult time, if you are coming out of a pandemic, you may need some special contributions because people are in need. So there's a sense of responsibility, of deep responsibility. Now, I was thinking about this mitzvah, and this idea that you actually have a power, you actually have a privilege. You are wealthy, you have something to give to others. That's a power. When we have something to give to others, that's power. When we can offer something to someone else, that, I see the question from Henry Cohen, if we have no feels, how much do we give? We can talk about that, Henry, later. If you need PA advice, happy to engage in that conversation. But you know what, that's a very good question, right? How we apply this law into, because the question behind what Henry is asking is how we take this law into our lives. And I will try to give you an idea when I speak about the larger context. So we have this power of giving something to someone, of offering something from ourselves and say, no, this is yours, because we have things that belong to us. Now, we often in our lives feel powerless. And feeling powerless is often a justification in order to refrain from doing all things. We can't deal with this. This is too complicated. It's a very common human experience to feel powerless. And we're not talking about feeling powerless because we are humble. We are talking about feeling powerless because we are overwhelmed or because it's uncomfortable to engage in certain things. So we detach, we disconnect ourselves from certain situations. Now, I believe that most or many of the mitzvot that we read about in Parashat Kedoshim have to do with the exercise of power, of skills. A few examples. A judge must not prevent justice. If a man who is powerful and is close to the judge, and the other one not so powerful and not so close to the judge must not prevent justice and needs to exercise his power with equality. Another example, do not speak derogatorily, evil language of your friends. And in that same context, so you don't use the power of speech negatively. And in the same context, lo tekalel hiresh. Don't insult a deaf person. You have the power of speech. This person has no power to hear. Don't insult. But it goes also about speaking behind someone's back. In the same context. Lifnei iver lo tasim michshol. Don't place an obstacle before a blind person. Now, yes, we could say that we are literally speaking about a blind person and a physical obstacle. But we also can say that we are talking about social situations in which we tempt fellow human beings for our own benefit, knowing or using things that we know that are weaknesses of their character. That's also to place an obstacle before a blind person. Manipulation for the sake of personal benefit is to place an obstacle before a blind person. We go back to the mitzvah of Don Rov. There are many mitzvot. One of them, for example, a very important one, and those that have been treasures of TVT, you know that we always have that in mind, is that you are not supposed to hold the wages of your employee for even one night. You cannot go sleep with someone else's money. You need to pay. And it is because you have a power over that person, and you are holding something that belongs to that person, and it comes also in the context of you're like stealing even if you don't mean to. You can't say, well, nothing happens, I'll give it to him or to her next week. No, you need to be in a rush. You can't hold that power. Now, the word that came to my mind is the word privilege. Now, the word privilege is a very political word in our days. Who has privilege? How we use that privilege? Now, the word privilege is not a negative one. It is sometimes used in order to accuse fellow human beings, and that's very problematic. That's when I use the word privilege to explain your actions or to explain your behavior, that's problematic. When I use the word privilege to explain or try to understand how I'm supposed to exercise the powers that I have, I think that means to seek the wisdom of Torah. Not in order to accuse fellow people, but in order to seek how to be a better citizen and a better human being. Now, the reason the word privilege came to my mind is because when we are thankful for a mitzvah, for the fulfillment of a mitzvah, in Hebrew, the answer that we give is "Zechut aburi." Is this a privilege for me? We use the word privilege. I feel privileged to have the ability to fulfill mitzvot, to use the powers that I've been given to have a positive effect in the world. Now, nobody needs to tell you what mitzvot you need to do, but it has to do with our ability to seek for those opportunities. Now, there are so many mitzvot. How many? Who say 600? Perfect. 613. But sometimes it gets difficult to remember all of them. So what do you do? How do you deal with this? How do you remember all these places in which you are supposed to be exercising your power and your privilege? The one that is self-recognized. The one that we want to experience as a positive situation, as a positive thing in our ability to increase good in the world. How do you know? And here, there is one of the last mitzvot in this Torah portion, and is Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And Sefer HaChinuch, which is it's a book that counts and explains every single mitzvah in the Torah, brings from the Talmud, Shabbat, page 31a, and brings a citation from Rabbi Akiva. When Rabbi Akiva is asked, Rabbi, what's, in your opinion, Klal Gadol b'Torah, the most important principle in the entire Torah, he says, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, as you love yourself. And this is how he explains this. He says, what's the foundation for don't steal, don't kill, don't covet. Relate to your employee as an equal and make sure that you always pay in time, that you act with generosity. What's the foundation for you to understand that you have been blessed with lots of wealth, but there are portions of that wealth that you don't even need to look at, so other people don't feel shame and can take and can sustain themselves? What's the foundation for all that? Rabbi Akiva says, love. The foundation for all these mitzvot that are between human beings, ben adam lechavero, shall be love. And then you'll know. If we approach our interactions, all our interactions, asking ourselves, and this is a difficult exercise, asking ourselves, am I loving this person right now? This person that is annoying me, or this person that I don't even know. And maybe the word is not loving, maybe the word is, am I being empathetic? Am I seeing a reflection of myself in this person? If we adopt that exercise, we're going to very likely get closer to fulfill more and more mitzvot, just by internalizing this very important principle. And then we will be privileged in our privileges. And we will bring more well-being, more love to this world by exercising the powers that we have been given. Shabbat Shalom.